A subtle but undeniable shift has surrounded Keith Urban, one that those closest to him sense just as strongly as fans watching from afar. For years, he stood as a symbol of consistency in country music, reliable, refined, charismatic, and quietly resilient. Recently, however, noticeable changes in his personal life, behavior, and self-perception have sparked unexpected questions about who he really is. Keith Urban is not unraveling, but he is no longer the exact person the public once believed they understood. The truth behind this evolution carries far greater emotional depth than many ever imagined. Keith Urban's personal transformation did not begin in 2025, nor did it start with recent headlines about his private life. To truly understand where he stands today, the story must reach much further back in time. Long before worldwide fame, long before addiction nearly destroyed his career, and long before Nicole Kidman became a guiding presence during his darkest moments, music had already shaped his identity. His relationship with music began at just 4 years old when his parents gave him a ukulele, a simple gift that quietly influenced the course of his life. By the time he was 5, he attended a Johnny Cash concert, and that single experience left a lasting impression. From that moment forward, he envisioned a life centered on performing, regardless of the sacrifices it might demand. Raised in Brisbane, Keith grew up surrounded by his father's love for country music, in a home where melodies filled every room. He picked up a guitar at 7 years old, and by 14, he was already performing in bars, talent competitions, and any venue willing to offer him a stage. At 15, he left school entirely, abandoning a typical teenage lifestyle to fully commit to music. From early on, his personality was shaped by ambition, urgency, and a deep belief that music was his only direction in life, even though he had no idea how emotionally challenging that path would eventually become. His earliest professional disappointments came at a young age. At 9, he appeared on the Australian talent show Pot of Gold, where Judge Barnard King openly criticized country music, calling it mediocre. Keith focused only on the one encouraging word the judge used, intrinsically, which his mother later explained meant he possessed natural musical ability. Despite that reassurance, the rejection left a lasting emotional mark. At 16, he tried again by competing on New Faces, performing Air Supply's All Out of Love, but once again failed to win. Even as a teenager, the pressure to prove himself and validate his talent had already become deeply tied to his self-worth. In 1991, Keith released his first album in Australia, and by 1992, he made the bold decision to move to Nashville. The move eventually helped him become an international star, but his early experiences there were far from glamorous. Nashville did not resemble the dream he had imagined. He spent nights sleeping in a worn-out van with his band, The Ranch, performing for extremely small audiences, sometimes as few as 3 people. He faced rejection, isolation, and the harsh realities of an unforgiving music industry. After The Ranch released an album in 1997 and later disbanded, another significant turning point entered his life quietly. Nashville introduced him to cocaine, beginning a battle with addiction that would follow him for years. By the early 2000s, Keith Urban had become one of the most celebrated voices in country music. His albums achieved commercial success, his songwriting matured, and the industry embraced him as a rising star. Behind the scenes, however, his personal struggles continued. While the public saw a charming, humble performer with effortless talent, Keith privately battled emotional issues that had never fully disappeared. His first rehabilitation experience in 1998 temporarily interrupted his addiction, but it failed to address deeper emotional causes such as pressure, loneliness, and unresolved childhood insecurities. Over time, those internal struggles resurfaced, and his life began to shift dramatically in 2005 when he met Nicole Kidman at the Day USA Gala in Los Angeles. Their connection formed instantly, naturally, and with surprising emotional depth. Nicole was already one of Hollywood's most recognizable actresses, while Keith was an Australian-born country artist reshaping the genre. Their relationship progressed quickly, and by June 2006, they were married in a widely publicized ceremony in Sydney. For Keith, Nicole symbolized the possibility of a fresh start, a life where he believed he could finally escape his troubled past. However, addiction could not be overcome through love alone. Only 4 months into their marriage, Keith relapsed. His alcohol use increased, and cocaine returned to his life, creating emotional strain that became impossible to hide. For someone who had always tried to appear emotionally strong, losing control in front of the person he loved most forced him to confront a painful reality: he was not okay, and he could not fix his problems alone. Nicole recognized the warning signs early, noticing subtle emotional changes, growing distance, and behaviors that suggested he was slipping back into dangerous habits. Instead of waiting for his situation to worsen, she organized an intervention involving close friends and trusted loved ones. The intervention was not fueled by anger or threats. Instead, it was an act of urgent love, offering support while establishing necessary boundaries. Keith later admitted that Nicole's actions marked the moment he realized he was standing at the most critical turning point of his life. In October 2006, he voluntarily entered the Betty Ford Center, canceling public appearances and stepping away from fame to confront his addiction directly. He remained in treatment for several months and emerged in January 2007 sober, humbled, and fully aware that recovery required honesty and unwavering commitment. Leaving rehabilitation marked the beginning of the most disciplined and transformative chapter of both his life and career. After completing treatment, Keith entered a new phase defined by structure and emotional clarity. Sobriety became the foundation guiding his personal choices, relationships, and artistic direction. Unlike earlier attempts to control his struggles, sobriety became a permanent lifestyle rather than a temporary solution. His creative evolution soon reflected this internal change. Albums released after 2007 carried emotional depth and personal honesty, documenting his process of rebuilding himself. Projects such as Get Closer in 2010, Fuse in 2013, Ripcord in 2016, and Graffiti You in 2018 each represented different stages of healing. His musical style expanded beyond traditional country, blending elements of pop, rock, electronic music, and experimental rhythms. While his sound became more diverse, his lyrics grew increasingly introspective and emotionally grounded, reflecting the clarity sobriety brought to his life. Keith's personal growth also became visible through television. In 2011, he joined The Voice Australia as a coach, where his naturally supportive and compassionate personality quickly connected with audiences. Viewers were impressed by his thoughtful mentoring style, which balanced honesty with encouragement. His success on the show led to his role as a judge on American Idol in 2012, where he served alongside Nicki Minaj and Mariah Carey. While tension between other judges often dominated headlines, Keith remained calm and balanced. Contestants consistently viewed him as the most sincere and emotionally supportive judge. He stayed with the show until its original conclusion and later returned as a mentor during the 2023 revival. Television exposure did more than expand his fame, it revealed his humanity. Fans began to see a version of Keith defined by kindness, openness, and emotional awareness, qualities that can be difficult to maintain within the entertainment industry. His mentoring style reflected his personal journey, shaped by experiences of failure, recovery, and resilience. Although he achieved stability, his transformation was never entirely simple or linear. His sobriety remained strong, but the pressures of fame, family responsibilities, career expectations, and personal history continued to exist beneath the surface. Many believed Keith had completely escaped his struggles, but in reality, he had simply learned to carry them differently. He immersed himself in constant work, recording albums, touring internationally, performing at major events, and maintaining a Las Vegas residency. He accepted opportunities that kept him moving forward, possibly because moments of stillness had always been emotionally challenging for him to confront. By 2025, Keith Urban's tattooed arms and sculpted physique reflected the discipline he had developed over the years. His face, showing the marks of age yet sharpened by experience, revealed a man who had lived through both remarkable success and deep personal pain. Keith Urban had survived addiction, endured the harsh early struggles of his career, rebuilt his life through love, and maintained sobriety for nearly 20 years. Yet even the strongest foundations can quietly crack under pressures that do not come from substances, but from time, expectations, and the heavy reality of living life under constant public scrutiny. By 2025, Keith faced a very different type of crisis, one driven not by relapse, but by personal transformation, emotional frustration, and a growing distance that even he found difficult to explain. The first warning signs appeared subtly. His demeanor began to shift, his interviews became more tense, and he started making decisions that surprised people who had known him for decades. In January 2025, multiple media outlets, including Patriot News, reported that Keith had unexpectedly dismissed several longtime band members, some of whom had performed alongside him for over 25 years. These departures occurred without prior warning, public explanation, or the warmth and professionalism that had always defined his leadership. For fans and industry insiders, this was the first clear signal that something within him had changed. At the same time, his marriage faced an unexpected turning point. For nearly 20 years, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman had been viewed as one of Hollywood's most admired couples, a partnership built on loyalty, mutual protection, and shared personal victories and struggles. Together, they raised 2 daughters, supported each other's careers, and survived the intense pressures of fame, addiction, and public attention. To many observers, their relationship appeared unbreakable. However, in 2025, their marriage ended. Reports suggested the separation was largely one-sided. According to sources who spoke with People, Nicole had wanted to preserve the marriage, while Keith chose to end it. After 19 years, the relationship that had once helped save him collapsed in a way that shocked fans and observers alike. Unlike previous challenges they had faced, this separation did not include emotional public statements, joint interviews, or visible attempts to explain their situation. Instead, it was marked by silence, emotional distance, and a sense of finality that felt unfamiliar for Keith. Around this same period, he began modifying lyrics in some of his most beloved songs, including songs originally written for Nicole. These changes confused audiences and fueled public speculation. They were not light improvisations but seemed intentional, sometimes darker, sometimes emotionally detached, leading many to believe he was experiencing a midlife reckoning. Some described his behavior as reinvention, while others viewed it as a personal crisis. The only shared conclusion was that Keith Urban was no longer behaving like the man the public believed they knew. Professionally, subtle cracks also appeared. Although he continued performing and maintaining his presence in the music industry, his public persona began to change emotionally. His familiar warmth remained, but it seemed layered with caution, restlessness, and a sense of searching for something he could not clearly identify. This transformation was not driven by addiction or arrogance. It appeared to be exhaustion, the kind that develops after decades of maintaining emotional strength for the benefit of others. This version of Keith was not reckless, he was quietly unraveling internally, perhaps in ways that had been building for years. For someone who had pursued perfection since childhood and spent his adult life battling unseen personal struggles, 2025 became the year when his internal conflicts finally became visible to the public. Keith Urban's emotional unraveling did not occur in isolation. Fame had always been both a blessing and a burden throughout his life. As the years progressed toward 2025, the pressure of constant public attention became increasingly difficult to manage. The world closely followed his marriage, his recovery from addiction, his career achievements, and his role as a father. Every triumph was celebrated, but every vulnerability was also magnified. For someone who deeply valued emotional privacy, living under continuous observation gradually felt less like an honor and more like confinement. One of the earliest turning points occurred in 2013 when Nicole Kidman was knocked to the ground by a paparazzo riding a bicycle on a crowded New York sidewalk. The chaotic moment was captured by witnesses and rapidly spread across global media. Although Nicole was shaken but not seriously injured, the incident deeply affected Keith. While he was not present at the scene, he quickly learned what had happened and responded publicly with calm but firm words, asking for basic human respect. His response revealed emotions he rarely expressed openly, the emotional toll constant media surveillance had taken on him, his wife, and their daughters. From that moment forward, Keith became noticeably more protective of his personal life. He grew more guarded during interviews, quicker to shut down intrusive questions, and increasingly determined to preserve the privacy of his family. One widely discussed radio interview illustrated this change clearly. When asked how he felt watching Nicole perform intimate scenes in her films, Keith abruptly ended the conversation. He did not respond with anger or criticism. Instead, he established a firm boundary so decisively that the moment left a lasting impression. It became a defining example of how he managed public curiosity while protecting his private world. While Keith worked to shield his family from external pressures, internal pressures continued to build. His Las Vegas residency, extensive international tours, television mentoring roles, and constant creative projects placed him in an endless cycle of performance and productivity. To the public, he appeared tireless, always energetic, polished, and fully engaged. Maintaining that image, however, required emotional and physical energy that could not be sustained indefinitely. As 2024 transitioned into 2025, the emotional strain surrounding him became increasingly noticeable. Friends and industry professionals observed subtle but undeniable changes in his behavior. He displayed moments of withdrawal, occasional impatience, and made sudden decisions that lacked his usual thoughtful deliberation. His decision to dismiss longtime band members was not merely a professional adjustment. It reflected a deeper internal struggle and a desire to regain control during a period when other aspects of his life felt uncertain. For decades, Keith had rebuilt himself after addiction, strengthened his marriage, raised his children, and navigated a career filled with both extraordinary achievements and painful setbacks. He had become a public symbol of resilience, personal transformation, and victory over adversity. Yet resilience has limits. Stability has limits. Even emotional healing has limits. Keith Urban's life story has always been shaped by perseverance, but 2025 introduced a turning point unlike any he had faced before. His transformation remains complex, deeply emotional, and still evolving. Fans continue to watch closely, waiting to see which version of Keith Urban will emerge in the future, wondering what moment truly defined the most significant turning point in his journey.